Okay, so today we are going to focus on meditation. And as we all know, meditation is an important part of unity practices. It's in our fourth principle, which says that prayer and meditation are essential elements of the spiritual life because they keep us awake and aware of our oneness with God and all creation. And learning meditation frees us from feelings of alienation and isolation from both God and from other people. It helps us get free of our ego and our feeling of separateness, which is why it's so important. And beyond that, it has a lot of amazing mental, emotional, and physical benefits that I'm going to talk about later. And by teaching us to meditate, we can tame our minds and restore us with the freedom of choose what and who we will give our attention to. Silence is our pipeline to the rich and the peace-filled fields of God. And being able to find silence is going to be one of our best tools to get divine messages and to connect with our spirituality. So I wanted to focus a little bit deeper on meditation today, give a little bit of the history of where it comes from, and give a broader perspective on meditation, because there are a lot of misunderstandings about meditation that I also had for a long time, thinking that meditation was sitting down, closing your eyes, and focusing on your breath, when in reality, meditation is this multi-dimensional practice with a lot of different applications and a lot of different ways to go about it. And I think that everybody has their own ideal form of meditation that works for them. So it's good to know that if sitting down and breathing and trying to stop your thoughts doesn't work for you, that there are a lot of other options. So let's start with a couple fun facts about meditation, just to give a little bit of history, because it's always good to recognize and acknowledge where a practice came from if it's something you're going to do consistently. So the first instances that historians have found of meditation comes from India, which is probably something a lot of people know, but you might not know it comes all the way from 5000 BC, which is a long time ago. That is many, many thousands of years ago. And archaeologists have found in caves, so this is back when people were just painting in caves, religious believers meditating. They found drawings of them all the way back in 5000 BC. And it wasn't until 3,500 years later that they actually started writing down the practices. So for thousands of years, the practice of meditation was just passed on through the generations orally. And then they were transcribed in the Vedas, which were ancient Indian texts that predate even Hinduism. So this is before even Hinduism was a religion. There were these religious texts called the Vedas, and that eventually gave birth to Hinduism and all sorts of things about spirituality and philosophy that we pretty much take for granted today. So the Vedas in 1500 BC is kind of where we get all that stuff. And then we get to about 400 BC, and this is where the Bhagavad Gita was written. And this is a really famous Hindu text. If I'm sure some of you may have read it. And this was really the work of literature. It was one chapter in this really, really long book. But this chapter in particular was very, very focused on living a spiritual life, and it had ideas on how to meditate and what to do to live more spiritually. And this text became very popular in India, and then eventually it spread across the world. So this text is kind of one of the things that really spread spread meditation around the world once it started getting translated. So then that was in 400 BC. And then in 600 BC we have that was 1000 BCE. Then 600 BC, we have Buddhism, which was born when Siddhartha Gautama came into being. And his background was in the religious traditions in India, but he created a lot of new ideas around cultivating and calling into existence what Buddhists called dhyana, which is Dhyana, which is training of the mind that leads to a state of awareness and involves removing senses and impressions from the mind. So now we get closer to the turn of the millennia, and meditation is becoming more of a ritualized form of practice with Buddhism. And so then we get to 653 AD. So we're skipping forward a couple hundred years. And a Japanese monk named Dosho discovered Zen when he was visiting China. And he learned from some Zen masters there who learned from the Buddhists in India, and came back to Japan and introduced the practice of meditation to Japan, opening the first meditation hall. Now, the reason why this is important is because Zazen, which is the Japanese name for sitting meditation, this is really where the idea of sitting down, closing your eyes, and focusing on your breath came from, is this practice of Zazen. And it's this Buddhist monk from Japan who popularized this form of meditation. So it's important to note that what we kind of think of as just normal meditation is just one type of meditation that was popularized by this Japanese monk, and in Japanese Zen it's called Zazen. But there are many, many, many different types. So just to give a little bit of background, some of the meditation that was happening before this was a lot of like mantra meditation, and a lot of chanting and even singing types of meditation that was done in India. And it wasn't until this Zen practice really popularized the sitting down and breathing that became kind of everyone's idea of what meditation was. So it's interesting to note as well that, as the centuries passed and the writings of Zen monks and Buddhist monks and Hindu spiritual theologians started getting translated into other cultures, that a lot of different religions adopted meditation. So in the Jewish tradition, there's the tradition of Kabbalah, which is a school of what they say is Jewish mysticism. And they adopted some of these concepts into their own practices. Then we have Sufism in Islam, which also adopted meditation. And then eventually Christian mystics also developed their own form of meditation in around the 14th century in Greece. So we see that meditation kind of started off in one religion, but eventually pretty much all of the modern religions adopted meditation in their own way, and they took the basics of meditation and basically translated them into the language of their own religion. So then we'll return to the Bhagavad Gita. It got translated in the 17th century in the Western world and in Europe, and it became a very popular text to read among intellectuals and philosophers. And so for a couple centuries, a lot of the Western philosophers were really, really into the Buddhist sutras and the Bhagavad Gita, and they started popularizing meditation in the West. And then going all the way up to the last century, we have Siddhartha, which was written and published in Germany by Hermann Hesse, and that sort of started to get Buddhism and meditation more in the public consciousness, not just among spiritual people. And then one of the big things that happened is in the 1960s, Hatha yoga and transcendental meditation started to get popular because there was a famous study that they did with a man named Swami Rama, if you guys know who that is. He was one of the first yogis to be studied by Western scientists, and this is really interesting. He went into the labs in the 1960s at a place called the Menninger Clinic. And he demonstrated to scientists his ability to voluntarily control his bodily processes. So some of the things he did in a lab was he altered his heartbeat while sitting motionless to 300 beats per minute for 16 seconds without moving. And then within a few minutes, managed to completely stop his heart for a couple seconds from pumping blood. He was able to produce different skin temperatures on different sides of his hand. And he produced various brain waves such as alpha, delta, theta, and gamma on demand. And he was even able to remain conscious of his environment when it looked like his brain from an electric perspective was in deep sleep. So this amazing meditation master coming in and demonstrating these abilities to the scientific community, this kind of exploded the idea of meditation. So over the next couple decades, all of a sudden you see a lot of scientists starting to study meditation, and you get more Zen and Tibetan and Shaolin monks going into labs and demonstrating all sorts of amazing feats of the body. And the last person I'll mention is a man named Dr. Herbert Benson, who in the 1970s did a lot of research on meditation. And before he popularized his studies, most people just thought that meditation was like a religious practice and a spiritual practice. And some people still see that today. But once he started doing his studies, psychologists and doctors started to realize that meditation is actually useful for healthcare. So they kind of secularized meditation and saw that it was so valuable that they took it out of the religious and the spiritual background and started applying it in their practices. And now meditation is a very essential part of therapy. Like a lot of modern therapy uses meditation. So meditation has taken this really, really long journey from ancient Hindu caves all the way to today, where now it's a subject of scientific inquiry, and it's part of the training for therapists and psychologists to teach mindfulness and meditation. So that's a little bit of background on meditation and why it's such a significant part of our consciousness, of our public consciousness. Not only has it been adopted by all sorts of religious traditions, but it's even been adopted by science as well. It's actually one of these beautiful things that is a bridge between religion and science that both areas can really appreciate. So that hopefully gives a sense of how important and essential of a tool and a practice meditation is. So now that we have a nice little background of meditation, hopefully you guys learned some fun facts about it. We're going to talk a little bit about what I see as the two categories of meditation. And it's really important that we realize the difference between these two categories and how they're both important, but also how they are appropriate for different things. So in Buddhism, there's something called the Eightfold Path, and the two final aspects of the path is called right mindfulness and right concentration. And so in Buddhism, which as we know is one of the main progenitors of meditation, there are basically two ways of meditating. So right mindfulness is just becoming aware of the experience of being your consciousness. You can think of this as relaxed awareness meditation. So this meditation is what I like to consider as moment-to-moment meditation, and basically a practice that in a perfect world you would be doing all the time. So this is not sitting down and, I mean, it can be sitting down and focusing on your breath, but it's also just going throughout your day and just being mindful. And I'll explain it in detail in just a moment about how to actually practice this. So that's the first style of meditation, which is right mindfulness. And in the Buddhist philosophy, you're basically supposed to be always doing this. So no time off type of thing. Now, then also we have right concentration. So right concentration is when you're focusing your attention on something in particular. Now, this can be a practice, an object, a feeling. It can be internal, it can be external. So unlike mindfulness, concentration meditation comes in all sorts of flavors. I mean, there's probably hundreds of different types of concentration meditation that you can do. So, when we start meditating and we start focusing on something and we say, focus on your breath, count your breaths from 1 to 10. Imagine this thing and you're focusing on this one thing. This is concentration meditation. So this is the meditation that is like your practicing meditation, where I would recommend setting aside 10 to 20 minutes every day. And what this meditation is really good for is it strengthens the muscle of your mind, as well as allows you to put strong energy into certain thoughts and intentions that you want to manifest in the world. So this is also really important, but as we'll discuss a little bit later, it takes a lot more energy and is a lot more difficult. And a lot of people have trouble doing it, and that's because it's hard, which is why the first one is so wonderful as a beginning. So let's talk about mindfulness first. And to understand the idea of mindfulness, I'd like to discuss this concept of the two minds. Now, once again, we're borrowing a little bit from Buddhism here, which is why one of the wonderful things I like about Unity is that it sort of appreciates all religions. So we can learn a little bit from Zen Buddhism to understand how we can practice mindfulness. So a lot of times people like to think of meditation as getting to a place where there are zero thoughts. But if you close your eyes and you try to eliminate all of your thoughts, well, your mind is thinking about eliminating your thoughts, right? So, it's kind of like a really misunderstood thing. So here's the thing, though. If your mind is thinking, then who is observing the mind thinking? This is your mind watching your mind. And in Zen Buddhism, we refer to this as the thinking mind and the observing mind. So these are the two minds. Now, in modern spirituality, we can also think about this as the ego and our connection to spirit. There's a lot of different language and tools we can use to picture this in our head. But the basic idea is that when we are fully in our thinking mind, we're kind of stuck and we're fused with it. But when we're able to observe it, we can start to connect with our higher connection to spirit and free ourselves from it. So while this has been a very, very common concept in Zen Buddhism for centuries, there's a lot of therapies that have caught on to this and realize that, not only is this good for spirituality, but this helps us with our everyday emotional problems as well. So the goal of mindfulness meditation is to disidentify with your thinking mind by allowing you to focus on your observing mind. So instead of being stuck in your thinking mind, because it's impossible to ever stop your thoughts, we can get to a place where we're unattached to our thoughts and we're watching them float by. When we get to that place, this is like our bridge to being more spiritually aware. It's kind of like our gateway. When we're unable to do this, which is all the time, and I'm guilty of this too. I've been learning more about this practice because I want to get better at it, but it's easy to forget about this as you go through your life. You end up stuck in your thinking mind, and it's like you've kind of severed your connection and your freedom to watch what's happening. So the issue with the thinking mind is that we really don't control the thinking mind, at least nearly as much as we might think we do. So if you don't believe me, I'll prove it, okay? So we're going to do a little exercise. Whatever you do, do not think about a pink elephant. Don't think about a pink elephant holding a blue umbrella with its trunk. Don't think about a pink elephant at all while you listen to me in the next minute. Okay, so not only was it very likely that at some point a pink elephant with a blue umbrella popped into your mind, but you were also watching yourself think about it while trying not to think about it. So this is kind of the central idea here. Like, we can't really control our thoughts nearly as much as we think. Like, our thoughts are just this mind that is just full of concepts that, we have a lot of times overloaded brains that throughout life we learn all these things. We've got language, we've got anxiety, stresses, blah, 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 and we've filled our room of our mind with all sorts of stuff. And it's kind of not always in our control. But what we can do is watch it, right? Because our thinking mind, it's like a dog on a leash that just keeps running after things. And if we aren't used to watching it, then our thinking mind will just drag us along with its chaos. And the same goes for our emotions too. So not just our thoughts, but a lot of times our emotions are out of control as well. And most of our suffering doesn't come from the emotions, but it's because we're just getting sucked into them. So most of our stress happens because our thinking mind and our observing mind are fused together, and we're not practiced in recognizing the difference between the two. So if you've ever wondered, how do I stop feeling so angry, or how do I not get nervous? Well, the answer is you don't, right? Like, you don't stop feeling angry. You can't control it necessarily. I mean, those emotions will sometimes pop up, and they'll continue to pop up. The trick is to not fuse with them when they come, to not identify with them. So in Zen, so here's how we start to practice this, okay? In Zen, they say that instead of saying, I am angry, say, I feel angry. I feel anger. Instead of saying, I am nervous, say, I feel nervousness. Instead of saying, I am jealous, say, I feel jealousy. Now, this might seem like a subtle difference, but try it. Think of a time recently where you might have felt a negative emotion, like anger or insecurity. Now, instead of thinking, I was angry at my brother or something, think instead, I felt anger towards my brother. You had anger, but that doesn't mean you were the anger. Emotions are not always a choice, but our behavior is. And it's unfortunately probably never going to change that our thoughts and emotions are not always going to be in our control. But what we can control is whether we choose to become them in our brain, or we choose to look at them and observe them and diffuse from them. And then you can act free from them, right? So the Buddhist saying says, what you resist will persist. So this is why we need to not resist these things. We need to just work on our observing mind. Put energy into the observing mind, not in the thinking mind. Let the thinking mind do its thing and watch it like a TV show. That is the key to mindfulness. So here are 2 exercises for you guys to use to practice this concept. So whenever you feel a strong emotion or a thought, try to disidentify with it and then take possession of it. So let's say you're having an issue with your boss. I don't know if many of you guys have bosses. I do. I have a boss of my lessons, and sometimes she can be a little irresponsible. So instead of saying, my boss is an idiot, say, I am having the thought that my boss is an idiot. You're separating yourself from making it true. You are looking at yourself as the one having this thought without identifying with it. You could say, I don't hate my ex. I am feeling hatred towards my ex. Instead of saying, I am lonely, you can say, I am feeling loneliness. Now, language is very powerful, right? Because a lot of times we think with language. I mean, we literally think with words in our brains. So making sure that we're using our language properly can actually really help with this. So disidentifying from these emotions and our thoughts, it implies that they're temporary and not permanent, and it also allows you to take responsibility from them and separate yourself from them. Now, the exercise number 2 is a little bit more extreme, but this is really, really good stuff. And this is how we start to get a little bit more spiritual with our mindfulness practice. So now you can thank your thinking mind for negative thoughts and emotions. Now, that might sound totally crazy, But it's effective because it forces you to be accepting of them instead of resisting, which, as we know, if you resist, it persists. So you could say, thank you, thinking mind, for feeling so nervous before my event tonight. It will really keep me on my toes. Or, thank you, thinking mind, for being angry at my boss. I really appreciate how much you care. Now, this might feel really bizarre, like expressing gratitude towards negative emotions or negative thoughts, but you're going to find that it diminishes the power of the thoughts and emotions over time, and it actually allows you to take action despite them. So I've been talking about a lot of exercises and a lot of specifics here, but I want you to remember that this is meditation, what we're talking about. We're talking about mindfulness here, because really all mindfulness is becoming aware. That's it. It's that simple. There's no deep practice necessary. There's no breathing, no incense, nothing. So mindfulness is something that is really essential for us to do. And it's as simple as noticing a thought and being like, hello, thought. Hello, emotion. How are you? You know, I see that you're there. And putting energy into that observing mind. So this is a habit that takes practice, but once you start to do it, you'll feel yourself becoming a little bit less of a slave to your thoughts and emotions, and you'll start to take more control of your internal daily life. This is the most important and essential first step of meditation. So we'll get to the second step of meditation later, but this is really step one. And for a lot of people, this is the thing that's going to help them the most and allow them to kind of connect more. So, you know, in Buddhism, they like to call this swirling chaos of thoughts in our mind samsara. It's a realm that we live in most of our life. And it's like living in an alternate reality where we're really unconnected from the truth. So that's when we're fused with our thinking mind. So if we can start to observe our thoughts and lift ourselves up from our thinking mind, then our consciousness, it starts to ascend, it starts to lift, and the illusion of our separateness from God and from others, it starts to weaken. And this is when we can start to experiencing the oneness of God in all creation. So I invite you all to do your best, give more energy and power to the observing mind, not the thinking mind, and to practice mindfulness throughout your day as much as possible. So that's a little overview of mindfulness meditation and a couple exercises for you guys to try. And now we can discuss concentration meditation, which is what most people kind of think of as meditation. So unity principle number 3, it says that we are co-creators with God, that we create reality through thoughts held in our mind. And whatever we consistently focus, keyword, focus our thoughts and feelings upon, manifests in our lives. This principle frees us from feeling victimized by life. It frees us from feeling blame and powerlessness, and it allows us to accept responsibility for our lives when we realize we have the power to change that which is holding us hostage. It allows us to co-create the life we dream of. So, how does that relate to what I just said? We just said that we want to observe our thoughts, and we also said that we don't really have as much control over our mind and our thoughts like we might think we do. So if we don't have much control over our thoughts and we like to just observe the mind, well then how do we manifest our thoughts into reality? How do we create a reality that we want? Well, key word is focus. That's the key to everything. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between this concept and what we discussed before, because I was only describing how to allow your thoughts and your feelings to arise and observe them. And if we aren't controlling our thoughts, then our reality would be created by the chaos of our mind all the time. So this is where our second type of meditation, concentration, comes into play. So there's only, this is my opinion, right? But I only think there's really one type of mindfulness meditation. And you can just do it no matter what you're doing, right? You can be mindful whether you're washing the dishes, whether you're walking, etc. So you could say there's one form of mindfulness meditation and infinite forms of mindfulness meditation at the same time. Concentration meditation is a little different. There's a lot of specific practices and styles that we can do with concentration meditation. So one of the most ancient and popular is mantra meditation, which is where you choose a specific series of words and you repeat it over and over. You can count your breaths. You can point your awareness on a single object, on a single part of your body. You can do focused body scans. You can work with energy. You can manifest intentions. So all of these are very, very different styles of concentration meditation. And so the reason we discuss this style of meditation after mindfulness is that mindfulness is like our important first step before this. We can't really point our awareness without finding our awareness first. So this is why it's always good to start meditating by becoming aware of the breath instead of, say, counting the breath or deeply focusing on the breath. It's just, you just start becoming aware, right? That's the first step. So it's kind of like mindfulness is the prerequisite to this practice, which is, you could say maybe a more powerful practice. So once we've gotten ourselves to the point where we've found our awareness, well, now we have the freedom to point our awareness where we want to. Now, once again, we're not resisting our thoughts or, trying to control our brain. We're just putting energy into our awareness and then we're pointing it in the direction that we want. So there's 3 general categories of concentration meditation that I kind of see. So we have mental practices, which are like exercises for the brain, which kind of help our awareness and our focus, like counting breaths, focusing on our senses, directing our awareness to one thing. Then we also have like manifestation practice, where we take thoughts, feelings, or ideas, and we focus on it, and we try to add energy and will it into existence. And then we have visualization exercises. And then we have, visualization exercises are also part of manifesting practices. And then we also have spiritual practices, which is like gratitude and prayer, where our focus is connecting ourselves to love or to spirit or to God. So those are kind of the 3 things we can use concentration meditation for. Now, here's the key difference between concentration and mindfulness. Concentration meditation requires energy, sometimes a lot of energy. So the practices are difficult. It requires willpower to complete it. And you might ask, well, why do I want to put energy into this? That sounds like a lot of work. And there's something that the third principle doesn't specify, but which I really believe, which is that, yes, thoughts in mind create after their kind, but that also depends how much power and energy you're putting into those thoughts. So if you think about it, if you have a thought in your mind that you want to manifest into reality, but it's a very weak thought, it's not very well defined, you're not putting energy into it, it's not going to be very effective, right? You have to really make that thought powerful, and you have to make it really intense, vibrant in your brain, well visualized, well imagined. So you might ask, well, why does concentration take so much energy? Well, it's because we need to put energy into these thoughts and into these practices to make them powerful. The power comes from our energy. So that's why it's important to be patient when we're doing some of these more difficult meditative practices. They're difficult because they are so powerful. Power comes from energy. We need to have energy and willpower for those things. So this is why when we're doing some of the concentration practices, I think that it's good to ritualize it. So this is where it's good to have an altar. It's good to have a special room, a good place to sit, incense, candles, and other ritual elements, because the act of creating an altar, the act of lighting incense, the act of, say, using a statue to focus on or something, these actions that we're doing are adding energy to the practice that we're doing. One example of adding energy to a practice of concentration meditation is meeting together in church. I mean, us being in a group here connected and us all having made the decision to take time out of our Sunday morning to come together and then say the prayers and the intentions that we say together as a group, that's another example of adding energy to a concentrated practice where we're putting energy into these intentions and stuff like that. So that's why the way I would recommend it is when it comes to concentration meditation practice, as I said, you have a lot of options. You can focus on your breath. You can focus on, particular things you want to focus on. You can manifest visualizations, intentions. I recommend making it a daily ritual or a weekly ritual, setting aside like a holy time for this, recognizing that it might be difficult and that it requires energy and willpower to do, and accepting that from the get-go, and setting a good space for it and making it this powerful practice that you do. So if you're going to set an intention that's really important to you, take the time to make it a whole ritual, make sure you're in a good state of mind and give yourself time to do it. Don't just do it in a rush, because that's what makes these practices so different, and why meditation can be confusing for a lot of people, because it's simultaneously this really easy thing that we should be doing all the time, which is maintaining our awareness, watching our thoughts, watching our mind do its thing, and focusing on the observing mind. That's a simple practice. And at the same time, meditation can also be this very difficult thing, which can require a lot of energy, where we're really trying to feed into an intention or a focus or a concentration on one thing. So try to set aside 10 to 20 minutes a couple times a week or every day during a time that you can do repeatedly. And remember to start with putting energy into the observing mind to get yourself to a point where you're aware first. And then do an exercise that feels right to you. So for me, I like to do a little bit of everything. I'll do some breath counting to get myself in a good place. I'll do a body scan, and then I'll usually do some like gratitude and some intention setting. But you can also pray. You can do all sorts of things, and it's not within the scope of the talk to like get into the specifics, because concentration practices can be very involved and have all sorts of techniques and stuff. So I encourage you to go find one in your own life, do some research or do some reading, or something that you've done in the past that you really liked, and just make it something consistent that you do. So if you put these two sides of the meditation coin together and you practice them both, I promise you it will provide you with more riches than money could ever give you. So best of luck on all of your meditative journeys, and amen. And we'll go into a little meditation next. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel the mighty power and the grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. So we're going to do one of my favorite types of meditations, which is gratitude meditation. We talked a little bit about this earlier, how it's very simple to just give gratitude to maybe a negative thought or emotion, and how wonderful that practice is to bring our attention into our life. So gratitude is a beautiful way to put energy towards something positive and practice attention and awareness at the same time. So let's start by sitting quietly and at ease. Just allow your body to be relaxed and open. Your breath is natural. Your heart is feeling slow and easy. Begin the practice of gratitude by feeling how year after year you've cared for your own life. And we're going to just begin to acknowledge all the things that have supported you in this care. So as I say these things, you can try to say them along with me in your own mind, or just let the words kind of sink in. So, with gratitude, I remember the people, animals, plants, insects, creatures of the sky and sea, air and water, fire and earth, whose exertion has blessed my life every day. I remember the care and labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors that came before me. I offer my gratitude for the blessing of the earth that I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the measure of health that I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the family and friends that I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the community that I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the teachings and the lessons that I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the life that I have been given. Now we're going to take a moment of silence in a moment. And I want you to just do your own gratitude practices in your own mind. Just find little simple things, or maybe big things, to be grateful for as we sink into the silence. So just as we are grateful for the blessings that we have been given, so we can be grateful for the blessings that others have also been given. So I offer my gratitude for the blessings that all in the world have been given. So continue to breathe gently. And now we're going to practice adding a little bit of joy to the world. So bring to mind someone that you care about, someone that's easy to rejoice for. Picture them and feel the joy that you have for their well-being, their happiness, and their success. Now with each breath, offer your grateful wishes for them. May you be joyful. May your happiness increase. May you not be separated from great happiness. May your good fortune and the causes for your joy and your happiness increase. Feel that natural gratitude for this person and for this loved one. And now, sing with me. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Amen.